Mark Thompson's hands trembled as he watched the Manhattan Hotel concierge hand his wife, Laura, a crisp envelope. Inside was a divorce letter, his final stand against her web of lies. Her carefree laughter with another man still burned in his memory. But this moment was his first step toward reclaiming his life. Would she unravel, or was something bigger waiting to surface? Mark, a 45-year-old financial advisor, lived a steady life in a charming Brooklyn brownstone. His days revolve around client meetings, spreadsheets, and the quiet satisfaction of a well-ordered routine. Methodical and reserved, he found comfort in predictability, his sharp mind always one step ahead in the world of numbers. His wife, Laura, 40, was his opposite, a vibrant graphic designer whose bold murals brought color to local cafes. Her infectious energy had once filled their home with warmth, her creativity spilling into every corner. A single framed mural in their living room, a swirl of blues and golds, hinted at their shared history. Married for 12 years, they seemed the perfect couple to outsiders, their differences a balance that worked. But beneath the surface, a quiet fracture had begun to grow. 6 months ago, Mark first noticed a shift. Laura, once open and talkative, grew distant. Her phone buzzed constantly, messages she'd quickly hide with a forced smile. He brushed it off as work stress. Her latest mural project was demanding, she'd said. But the unease settled in his chest, a nagging weight he couldn't shake. He tried to bridge the gap with small gestures, like bringing home her favorite coffee from the corner deli, hoping to spark the connection they'd once had. Her responses were polite but hollow, her eyes darting to her phone as if it held a secret she couldn't share. One evening, while doing laundry, Mark found a crumpled receipt in Laura's jacket pocket. It was from a trendy rooftop bar in Soho, dated a night she'd claimed to be working late at her studio. The discovery hit him like a cold wave. Why hadn't she mentioned it? He wanted to believe it was innocent. A client meeting, perhaps, but the receipt listed 2 cocktails and a shared dessert, too intimate for a casual outing. He slipped it into his pocket, telling himself he'd ask her later, hoping for a simple explanation. But deep down, a seed of doubt took root, whispering that something was wrong. Mark's best friend, Alex, a cheerful marketing manager, noticed his tension during their weekly coffee meetup. "You okay, man? You seem off," Alex said, his usual grin fading. Mark hesitated, then shared the receipt and Laura's odd behavior. Alex leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Talk to her, Mark. Don't let this fester. You deserve the truth." The advice lingered, but Mark wasn't ready to confront her yet. He wanted to trust Laura, to believe their marriage was still solid. But the distance between them grew, her late nights at the studio stretching longer, her excuses sharper. Their home, once a haven, felt heavier each day. The mural in the living room, once a symbol of their bond, now seemed to mock him with its vibrant colors. Laura's laughter, which used to echo through the house, was replaced by distracted hums or quick apologies as she rushed out the door. Mark threw himself into work, hoping the numbers would drown out his doubts, but they only amplified the silence at home. He began to notice other signs. Her phone locked with a new password, her vague answers about her day. Each clue piled onto the last, building a case he wasn't ready to face. One night, unable to sleep, Mark sat in the dark living room, staring at the city lights beyond their window. He thought back to their early years, when Laura would drag him to art galleries, her eyes bright with dreams. They'd talk for hours, planning a future that felt unbreakable. Now, those memories felt like relics of a life that no longer existed. He wanted to fight for her, to pull her back from whatever was pulling her away, but he needed answers first. The receipt, still tucked in his drawer, was a reminder that the truth might not be what he hoped. As summer approached, Mark decided to try one last time. He planned a quiet dinner at home, cooking Laura's favorite pasta dish, hoping to spark a real conversation. When she walked in, her hair tousled from a long day, she smiled, a real smile for a moment. But as they sat down, her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, her face tightening, and mumbled an excuse about a client email. Mark's heart sank. The dinner passed in near silence. the pasta growing cold on their plates. That night, as Laura slept, Mark made a decision. He couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. He needed to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The receipt from the Soho bar became Mark Thompson's silent obsession. He kept it hidden in his desk drawer, its creased edges a constant reminder of the growing chasm between him and Laura. Each night, as she returned late from her studio with vague excuses, the doubt in his chest tightened. He wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but fear of what he might learn held him back. Instead, he watched her, searching for clues in her distracted glances and hurried goodbyes. One Saturday morning, Laura announced she was heading to an art conference in Philadelphia for the weekend. "It's a big opportunity," she said, packing a small suitcase with a smile Mark hadn't seen in months. Her enthusiasm felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else. He nodded, forcing a supportive tone. "Sounds great. Let me know how it goes." But as she left, her suitcase rolling behind her, a knot formed in his stomach. Something about her urgency felt off, too rehearsed. That afternoon, unable to focus on work, Mark opened their shared location app on a whim. His breath caught. Laura wasn't in Philadelphia. Her phone pinged at a boutique hotel in Midtown Manhattan. His pulse raced as he grabbed his keys, driven by a mix of dread and determination. The drive felt endless, each red light amplifying his unease. When he reached the hotel, he parked across the street, his eyes scanning the sleek glass entrance. Then he saw her. Laura stepped into the lobby, radiant in a deep green dress he'd never seen before. Her laughter echoed as she spoke to a man in a tailored suit, tall, confident, with an easy charm. They moved with familiarity, her hand brushing his arm as they shared a private joke. Mark's chest tightened, the world narrowing to that single moment. He couldn't hear their words, but her smile, so unguarded and bright, was one she hadn't given him in years. The man leaned closer, and Laura didn't pull away. Mark sat frozen in his car, his hands gripping the steering wheel. Part of him wanted to storm inside, to demand answers, but his body wouldn't move. The truth was undeniable now, a blade cutting through his last shred of hope. He watched as they crossed the lobby, their ease a stark contrast to the heaviness in his heart. When they disappeared into an elevator, Mark drove home, the city lights blurring through his tears. Back in their brownstone, the silence was suffocating. He poured a glass of whiskey, staring at the mural in their living room. Its vibrant swirls now felt like a lie, a facade of a life that no longer existed. His phone buzzed, a text from Laura. "Conference is amazing. Miss you." The words stung, each one a betrayal. He didn't reply. Instead, he opened his laptop and began searching for answers. A quick check of Laura's social media revealed little, but a linked profile caught his eye. A man named Ethan Carter tagged in a post about an art gallery opening. The photo matched the man from the hotel. Ethan was a wealthy art collector, known for funding high-profile design projects. Mark's stomach churned as he dug deeper, finding articles about Ethan's influence in the art world. One detail stood out. Ethan had recently offered a prestigious contract for a mural project in Chicago. The pieces clicked together. Laura's late nights, her secrecy, the conference. She wasn't just drifting away. She was planning a new life, one that didn't include him. Mark closed his laptop, his mind racing. The betrayal was more than an affair. It was a calculated choice. Laura had chosen Ethan's promises over their marriage, over the vows they'd made 12 years ago. He thought of their early days, when they dreamed of a future together, and the pain of her deception cut deeper. But amid the hurt, a spark of resolve ignited. He wouldn't let this destroy him. He needed to know the full truth, and he needed to act, not out of anger, but with clarity. The next morning, Mark called Alex, his voice steady despite the storm inside. "I saw her with someone else," he said, recounting the hotel scene. Alex listened, then offered a plan. "You need proof, Mark. Don't confront her yet. Find out what's really going on." Mark agreed. He wasn't ready to face Laura, but he was done being the fool. The receipt, the hotel, Ethan's contract, they were pieces of a puzzle he was determined to solve. Mark Thompson's world felt like it was unraveling, each new discovery tightening the knot of betrayal in his chest. Laura's secret life with Ethan Carter wasn't just a fleeting affair. It was a deliberate plan tied to a lucrative mural contract in Chicago. The realization that she intended to leave him for a new life stung worse than the image of her laughing in that Midtown hotel lobby. But Mark refused to crumble. He needed proof, and he needed to understand how deep her deception ran. Over the next few days, Mark became a quiet investigator. He combed through Laura's emails, using their shared cloud account, and found a thread with Ethan. The messages were professional at first, discussions about the Chicago project, timelines, budgets. But buried in the chain were personal notes. "Can't wait to see you again," Ethan wrote, followed by Laura's reply. "You make everything feel possible." Each word was a fresh wound, confirming her emotional betrayal. Mark's hands shook as he read, but he pressed on, determined to uncover the full truth. He cross-referenced Ethan's name online, finding more than just an art collector. Ethan Carter had a reputation for charming, ambitious artists, offering them dream opportunities with hidden strings. A blog post from a former designer hinted at his tactics. Promises of fame in exchange for personal favors, only to discard them when they serve their purpose. Mark's anger grew, not just at Laura, but at Ethan, a man who preyed on dreams to manipulate. He wondered if Laura was a willing participant or another victim caught in Ethan's web. Laura returned from her conference on Sunday, her suitcase rolling into their Brooklyn brownstone with a soft thud. She looked tired but carried a spark in her eyes, one Mark now recognized as deceit. "The talks were inspiring," she said, kissing his cheek before heading upstairs. Her casual eye twisted the knife deeper. Over dinner, she spoke of the event in vague terms, her words sounding rehearsed. Mark nodded, his face a mask of calm, but inside he was screaming. He wanted to confront her, to lay out every piece of evidence, but Alex's advice echoed. Wait for the right moment. That night, Mark couldn't sleep. He sat in his home office, the glow of his laptop illuminating the room. He found a new email in Laura's inbox, a confirmation for a meeting with Ethan at a Manhattan gallery, scheduled for the following week. Attached was a draft contract for the Chicago project, detailing a 6-month relocation. The timeline hit him hard. Laura was planning to leave in less than a month, without a word to him. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was a calculated exit from their life together. Mark's next move was cautious but bold. He contacted a private investigator, a discreet professional recommended by a client. "I need to know who this guy is and what he's doing with my wife," Mark said, handing over Ethan's name and the hotel details. The investigator nodded, promising a report within days. Mark felt a mix of relief and guilt. Spying on Laura wasn't who he wanted to be, but her secrecy left him no choice. He needed clarity to decide his next step. By midweek, the investigator delivered. Ethan wasn't just a manipulator. He had a history of exploiting artists, offering contracts that bound them to him personally and professionally. The investigator found photos from the gallery's social media. Laura and Ethan at an event, smiling for the camera, her hand resting lightly on his elbow. The caption praised their collaborative vision, but to Mark, it was proof of her duplicity. Worse, the investigator uncovered a pattern. Ethan had done this before, luring women with promises, only to drop them when they pushed back. The evidence was overwhelming, but it left Mark torn. Part of him hated Laura for choosing Ethan's empty promises over their marriage. Yet another part wondered if she'd been manipulated, her ambition twisted against her. He thought of their early days, when her dreams of creating art that mattered had inspired him. Had Ethan exploited that passion, or had Laura willingly traded their life for a shot at fame? The uncertainty gnawed at him, but one thing was clear: he couldn't let this continue. Mark met Alex at their usual coffee spot, laying out the investigator's findings. Alex listened, his face grim. "She's in deep, Mark, but this Ethan guy's the real problem. You could confront her, but what if you hit him where it hurts instead?" The idea sparked something in Mark, a way to expose Ethan without sinking to his level. He wasn't sure how yet, but the thought of turning the tables gave him a flicker of purpose amid the pain. Mark Thompson stood at a crossroads, the weight of Laura's betrayal and Ethan's manipulations pressing against his resolve. The evidence was undeniable. Laura's emotional affair, her secret plans to relocate to Chicago, and Ethan's history of exploiting ambitious artists. Anger surged through him, but so did a flicker of empathy. Was Laura a willing betrayer or a pawn in Ethan's game? Mark pushed the question aside. He couldn't undo her choices, but he could reclaim his dignity and ensure justice. He began with a calculated move. Instead of confronting Laura, Mark contacted a lawyer, a calm professional who specialized in discreet divorces. "I want it clean, no public drama," Mark instructed, his voice steady despite the ache in his chest. The lawyer drafted a divorce letter, simple and direct, stating Mark's knowledge of her actions and his decision to end their marriage. He arranged for it to be delivered to Laura at the Manhattan Gallery during her next meeting with Ethan, a moment designed to catch her off guard. As the letter was sent, Mark wrestled with his next step. Exposing Ethan became his focus, not out of vengeance, but to protect others from his schemes. He remembered a friend, Sarah, a journalist with a knack for uncovering corporate misconduct. Over coffee, Mark shared Ethan's pattern of manipulation, carefully omitting Laura's name to keep it professional. "This guy's hurting people, Sarah, artists, mostly women, who trust him." Sarah's eyes lit up. "If you give me evidence, I can dig deeper," she said. Mark handed over the investigator's report, anonymized to focus on Ethan's tactics. Days later, Laura returned home, her face pale. The letter had reached her. She found Mark in their living room, the air thick with tension. "We need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. Mark nodded, bracing himself. Laura's eyes were red, her usual confidence gone. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she began, her words faltering. "Ethan, he offered me the Chicago contract, but it came with pressure. He made me think I had to get close to him to secure it. I was stupid, Mark. I thought I could handle it." Mark's jaw tightened. "You chose to lie, Laura. You chose him over us." His voice was low, controlled, but the hurt was raw. Laura's tears fell, but she didn't look away. "I know I messed up. I was desperate for the opportunity, and he used that. But I didn't want to lose you. I said no to Chicago, to him, but it was too late." Her confession stunned Mark. She'd rejected Ethan's final offer, but the betrayal still stood. He wanted to believe her regret, but the trust was shattered. The conversation shifted something in Mark. Laura wasn't just a traitor. She'd been manipulated, her ambition twisted by a predator. His anger split, part for her, part for Ethan. "You should have told me," he said, standing. "I could have helped you. Now, I need to help myself." He walked away, leaving her in the quiet of their fractured home. The divorce was inevitable, but Ethan's reckoning was still to come. Sarah's investigation moved quickly. She cross-referenced Mark's evidence with accounts from other artists, building a damning case. Within a week, she pitched an exposé to her editor, framing Ethan as a serial manipulator who exploited creative women. Mark, meanwhile, prepared for the fallout. He moved his belongings to a temporary apartment in Dumbo, unable to stay in the brownstone's heavy silence. Each box packed was a step toward freedom, though the pain lingered. Late one night, Laura called, her voice desperate. "Mark, I'm sorry. I'm trying to fix this. I reported Ethan to the gallery board, but they won't listen. Can we try again?" Mark's heart wavered, but he stayed firm. "You broke us, Laura. I need to move forward, and so do you." Hanging up, he felt a mix of sadness and strength. He wasn't the man who'd trembled in that hotel parking lot. He was choosing himself. Sarah's article went live the next day, a viral piece titled "The Art of Deception: How One Collector Exploited Dreams." It detailed Ethan's tactics, backed by anonymous testimonies, and sparked outrage online. Mark read it at his new apartment, a weight lifting from his shoulders. He hadn't just exposed Ethan. He'd given voice to others. Laura's confession had been a turning point, but it was Mark's resolve that turned pain into purpose. He wasn't done healing, but he was ready to fight for his future. Mark Thompson finalized the divorce papers in a quiet lawyer's office, the pen scratch marking the end of a 12-year chapter. The Brooklyn brownstone, once a symbol of his life with Laura, was sold, its memories too heavy to keep. He settled into a minimalist loft in Dumbo, its bare walls a blank canvas for his new beginning. The pain of Laura's betrayal lingered, but Mark felt a growing sense of freedom. He had faced the truth and emerged stronger, determined to rebuild on his own terms. Sarah's expose on Ethan Carter had ripple effects. The article, shared thousands of times, stripped Ethan of his influence. Galleries dropped him, clients pulled funding, and his firm collapsed under the weight of public outrage. Mark followed the fallout online, not with glee, but with quiet satisfaction. Justice had prevailed, not through vengeance, but through the power of truth. He received a message from Sarah. "You did good, Mark. Other women are coming forward now." Her words were a reminder that his actions had impact beyond his own pain. Laura, meanwhile, left New York. She took a job in Seattle, leading community art projects for a nonprofit. Mark heard through a mutual friend that she'd sworn off high-profile contracts, focusing instead on work that grounded her. Her move wasn't a triumph, but a retreat, a chance to rebuild after her choices unraveled her life. She sent Mark a letter before leaving, handwritten and brief. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I lost myself, and I lost you. I'm trying to be better. I hope you find peace." Mark read it once, then tucked it away. Her words stirred empathy, but they couldn't undo the past. Mark leaned into his new life with cautious optimism. He started therapy, a step he'd once dismissed, and found it helped him untangle the anger and grief. His sessions became a space to rediscover who he was without Laura's shadow. He reconnected with friends, joining Alex for trivia nights at a local bar, where laughter came easier each time. At work, he took on a mentorship role, guiding younger advisors with a patience he hadn't known he had. Helping others gave him purpose, a counterweight to the betrayal that had once defined his days. One crisp fall morning, Mark walked across the Brooklyn Bridge, the city skyline gleaming under a clear sky. He paused halfway, leaning against the railing, and thought of the man he'd been a year ago, lost, betrayed, trembling in a hotel parking lot. That man was gone, replaced by someone who'd learned to value his own worth. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket, a habit he'd picked up in therapy, and jotted down a single word: forward. It was a promise to himself, a commitment to keep moving no matter what lay ahead. At a coffee shop later, Mark ran into Sarah, who was working on a follow-up story about Ethan's victims. "You sparked something big," she said, her smile warm. "Those women are rebuilding, just like you." Mark nodded, grateful for the role he'd played. He bought her coffee, a small gesture of thanks, and they parted with a promise to stay in touch. Back at his loft, he hung a single piece of art, a simple abstract print in bold reds, chosen for its energy, not its memories. It was his first step toward making the space his own. Months later, Mark received an email from an old colleague, mentioning Laura's work in Seattle. She was teaching art to kids, her projects gaining local praise. The colleague added, "She talks about you sometimes. Says she hopes you're happy." Mark closed the email without replying. He wished Laura well, but her story was no longer his. He had found his peace, not in her redemption, but in his own resilience. As winter approached, Mark signed up for a photography class, a hobby he'd always wanted to explore. The first session, held in a sunny studio, felt like a gift, a chance to see the world through a new lens. Standing among strangers, camera in hand, he felt a spark of possibility. The betrayal that had once consumed him was now a distant echo, a lesson in truth and strength. Mark knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, he was ready to walk it alone, with hope as his guide.